There are two kinds of warfare that can bring a superpower to its knees. The first is the kind you see coming: tanks, missiles, armies. The kind with sirens and smoke and satellite footage on the evening news. The second is the kind that happens on the evening news: a chair, a camera, a microphone, and a man who shows up with the truth when the other side has been selling lies. Tonight on American television, during American prime time, speaking directly to the American people, the Prime Minister of Canada sat down in a CNN studio and, for 37 minutes, dismantled the President of the United States. Not with threats, not with bluster, not with the kind of chest-pounding dominance games that Trump has built his entire political identity around. With documents, with audio recordings, with facts that the White House assumed would never see daylight, and with a challenge delivered directly into the camera, directly to Donald Trump, that has left the President of the United States trapped between two options, both of which end in humiliation. At 7:47 p.m. Eastern Standard Time this evening, something happened that has never occurred in the history of U.S.-Canada relations. A Canadian Prime Minister bypassed the U.S. government entirely, bypassed the State Department, bypassed the diplomatic channels, bypassed the official spokespersons and the carefully managed narratives, and went over their heads. Straight to the American public. Straight to the voters. Straight to the living rooms and kitchen tables and phone screens of 340 million Americans. And he said, "Your president has been lying to you. Here's the proof." And here's his voice on tape doing exactly what he denies. 18.7 million Americans watched it live. Millions more are watching the clips right now. And by morning, every American with a phone or a television will have heard the President of the United States threatening to turn Canada into an economic wasteland unless they surrender. Not alleged, not reported, not paraphrased. His voice, on tape, unmistakable. Carney didn't go through diplomatic channels because diplomatic channels lead to the White House. And the White House has been lying. So Carney went around them. He went to the one audience that can actually force a U.S. president to change course, the American people. And then he did something that no foreign leader has ever done. He looked into the camera and challenged the President of the United States to a live public debate. Any network, any moderator, any time. Do you have the courage to defend your position in a fair debate? Or will you continue to hide behind press statements and social media posts? That is a foreign leader calling the President of the United States a coward on American television during prime time to an audience of nearly 19 million people. And the fact that Carney felt confident enough, strategically secure enough to do this tells you everything. Everything about how completely the power dynamics have shifted, about how thoroughly Canada has seized control of this crisis, and about how little Trump has left to fight with. In this breakdown, I'm going to walk you through the key moments from Carney's CNN interview, the specific revelations that are dominating every headline tonight. I'm going to show you the evidence Carney presented, including the audio recording that the White House never expected to become public. I'm going to reveal the immediate reaction from Washington and why officials are scrambling to contain damage they cannot contain. I'm going to explain why Carney's decision to go on American television represents a fundamental break from everything we know about diplomatic practice and why it's so devastatingly effective. And I'm going to give you analysis of whether Trump can survive the next 8 days and what happens when the March 18th deadline arrives with the president trapped between his ego and his country's survival. Subscribe to join the community. Leave a comment so we can keep the conversation going. And share this video. Because tonight, the American people heard the truth from a Canadian, and they deserve to keep hearing it. Let me walk you through the most significant moments from this interview. Because this wasn't a casual conversation. This wasn't a diplomatic courtesy. Every segment, every answer, every document produced, every piece of evidence revealed was designed to undermine a specific Trump administration talking point. One by one, surgically. With the kind of preparation that tells you Carney didn't show up for an interview. He showed up for an operation. Anderson Cooper opened by asking Carney why Canada decided to take such aggressive economic measures against the United States. It's a straightforward question. The kind of question that most politicians would answer with diplomatic hedging. Well, it's complicated, or there are many factors, or we're trying to find a path forward. Carney's response set the tone for the entire 37 minutes. Let me be very clear about something. Canada did not start this crisis. 6 words. And every one of them is a brick in a wall that the White House cannot climb over. We did not impose tariffs on American goods in violation of a signed trade agreement. Brick. We did not question whether American states should remain part of the United States. Brick. We did not threaten to dismantle the defense systems that protect North America. Brick. President Trump did all of those things. Canada responded to aggression. We did not initiate it. And everything Canada has done since February has been designed to defend our sovereignty and our economic security from a partner who decided to treat us as an adversary. That answer, delivered in under 40 seconds, reframes the entire crisis. Trump says Canada is the aggressor. Carney says, "You started this. We finished it." And he dares anyone watching to disagree. Cooper then asked about the tariffs and whether Canada's retaliatory measures were proportional. Carney pulled out a document on live television in front of 18.7 million viewers. This is the USMCA, the trade agreement that Canada, the United States, and Mexico signed in 2020. Article 2.4 explicitly prohibits the imposition of tariffs on goods traded between the 3 countries except under very specific circumstances, none of which apply here. President Trump's tariffs violated this agreement. They were illegal under the treaty his own administration negotiated. His own administration's treaty. Trump signed this deal. Trump celebrated this deal. Trump called it the greatest trade agreement in history. And then he violated it. Carney held up another document. This is a legal opinion from the USMCA Dispute Resolution Panel, issued on February 20th, 2026. The panel ruled unanimously that U.S. tariffs on Canadian goods are in violation of the agreement and must be removed immediately. President Trump has ignored this ruling. Unanimously, an international tribunal established under the agreement Trump himself signed ruled unanimously that his tariffs are illegal, and he ignored them. So when the White House says Canada is acting unreasonably, they're ignoring the fact that an international tribunal created by the agreement President Trump signed, agreed with Canada's position. Cooper then asked about Trump's claim that Canada is weaponizing energy exports. And Carney's response was a masterclass in reframing. Canada sells energy to the United States. We have done so for decades. But we are not obligated to sell energy to the United States at prices and quantities that the United States dictates. Canada is a sovereign nation. We control our natural resources. If American buyers want Canadian energy, they can negotiate contracts like any other buyer. Like any other buyer. Not a special buyer. Not a privileged buyer. Not a buyer who gets to set the terms. A buyer. One of many. Who pays market rate and negotiates in good faith. What President Trump is demanding is guaranteed supply at guaranteed prices, with no ability for Canada to redirect exports to other markets, even if those markets offer better terms. That's not trade. That's subordination. And Canada will not accept it. Subscribe right now. Because what I'm about to show you is the moment in the interview that is causing the most damage to the White House tonight. The moment that every political strategist in Washington is calling the point of no return. Cooper asked Carney about the phone call between Carney and Trump on March 3rd. The call that ended with Carney disconnecting. And what happened next is something that has never happened before on American television. Carney said, "I'm going to share something with the American people that I believe they have a right to know." Carney then said that with approval from the Canadian government's legal counsel, he was releasing a partial audio recording of that phone call. Cooper looked surprised, genuinely surprised. Because this doesn't happen. Foreign leaders don't release recordings of calls with American presidents on American cable news. It has never happened. In the entire history of television. In the entire history of U.S. foreign relations. Until tonight. Carney said, "We recorded this call as is standard practice for calls between heads of government." President Trump was aware the call was being recorded. What I'm about to play is a 92-second segment where President Trump makes very clear what he actually wants from Canada. 92 seconds. That's all it took. 92 seconds of Donald Trump's own voice to destroy every claim his administration has made about this crisis. The audio played. Trump's voice. Unmistakably. There is no ambiguity. There is no, is that really him? There is no deepfake defense. That is the President of the United States. Mark, you need to understand something. Canada needs us more than we need you. You've got 40 million people. We've got 340 million. Your entire economy depends on selling to us. So here's the deal. Here's the deal. Not, let's negotiate. Not, let's find common ground. Here's the deal. Take it or else. You drop all this nonsense about sovereignty and respect. Nonsense. About sovereignty. About respect. The two things every nation on earth considers non-negotiable, Trump calls nonsense. You sign the energy agreement I offered. You pull out of that stupid NATO fund. And we can go back to normal. Normal. Meaning Canada as a subordinate. Canada as a resource colony. Canada as a country that does what it's told and is grateful for the privilege. But if you keep fighting me, and here it comes. The threat. The real threat. Not the sanitized version from press statements. The real thing. In his own voice. In his own words. I will destroy the Canadian economy. I will cut you off from U.S. markets. I will make sure no American company does business in Canada. I will turn Canada into an economic wasteland. Economic wasteland. That is the President of the United States threatening to turn a G7 democracy, a NATO founding member, an ally that has fought beside America in every major conflict since World War I, into an economic wasteland. Not because Canada attacked America, not because Canada threatened American security, because Canada refused to surrender. And then your people will blame you, not me. That last line, that's the tell. That's the reveal. He's not thinking about American interests. He's not thinking about trade policy. He's not thinking about economic outcomes. He's thinking about blame, about political optics, about making sure that when the destruction he causes hits, somebody else takes the fall. So take the deal. Take the deal. Surrender or be destroyed. Those are the terms the President of the United States offered to Canada's Prime Minister. Not in some heated moment. Not in an off-the-cuff remark. In a formal call between heads of government. Recorded. Documented. Now public. The CNN studio went silent. Cooper said, "That's President Trump's voice." Carney said, "Yes. That is President Trump telling the Prime Minister of Canada that he will destroy our economy unless we surrender." That is the truth of what this crisis is about. It's not about trade policy. It's about whether Canada will accept American domination or whether we will defend our independence. The audio clip went viral instantly. Instantly. Within minutes, it was the top trending topic on every social media platform. News organizations began replaying it. Political commentators on both sides started reacting. Late night shows interrupted their tapings to address it. International news agencies picked it up. By midnight, there will not be a politically aware person on the planet who hasn't heard it. And the White House? The White House had no response because they were caught completely off guard. They didn't know Carney had the recording. They didn't know he'd release it. They didn't know he'd do it on live American television during prime time. They had no denial prepared, no context prepared, no counter-narrative prepared. Because you can't prepare a counter-narrative for your own voice saying the thing you've been denying you said. Cooper then asked about the March 18th deadline, and Carney used the moment to do something critical. He looked past Cooper, past the studio audience, past the commentators and the pundits, and spoke directly to every American watching. The deadline is real. 3 words. No qualification. No diplomatic hedging. If the United States does not meet all 5 of Canada's requirements by 5 p.m. on March 18th, Canada will implement Phase 2 measures. And then he listed them, one by one, slowly, clearly, so that every American understood exactly what was coming for them. That means total suspension of energy exports to the United States. That means withdrawal from USMCA. That means dissolution of NORAD. That means suspension of U.S. bank operations in Canada. And that means the Democratic Trade Alliance, which launches on March 20th, will operate as a framework explicitly designed to reduce dependence on the United States and to protect member nations from American economic coercion. This is not a bluff. This is a commitment. And the United States has 8 days to decide. Cooper then asked what Carney would say to Americans worried about gas prices, electricity costs, and economic disruption if Phase 2 is implemented. And this is where Carney showed why he's winning this fight. Because he didn't dismiss American pain. He didn't gloat. He didn't say, that's your problem. He spoke to Americans with empathy. Genuine, visible empathy. I understand that ordinary Americans will suffer if this crisis continues. I regret that deeply. But I want American citizens to understand Canada did not create this situation. Your president did. Canada offered to negotiate. Your president demanded surrender. Canada tried to maintain the partnership. Your president threatened our economy and our sovereignty. I genuinely hope President Trump chooses to meet Canada's requirements and that this crisis ends peacefully. But if he chooses confrontation, Canadians will stand firm. We will not sacrifice our independence to avoid short-term economic pain. And then, the line that will resonate with every American who has ever felt lied to by their own government, and I believe most Americans, if they knew the truth about what President Trump demanded from Canada, would support our decision to defend ourselves. If they knew the truth. That's the key phrase. He's not saying Americans are his enemy. He's saying Americans are being kept from the truth by their own president. And he just gave them that truth. On their own television. In their own living rooms. Then came the moment that has dominated every news cycle since the interview ended. The moment that political strategists will study for decades. The moment that a Canadian Prime Minister did something no foreign leader has ever done and put the President of the United States in a trap with no exit. Cooper asked, "What would you say to President Trump if he were sitting here right now?" Carney didn't hesitate. He turned from Cooper. He looked directly into the lens. And he spoke as if Trump were in the room. As if Trump were in the chair across from him. As if the distance between Ottawa and Washington had collapsed to nothing. Mr. President, you and I both know what happened. You know that you violated the trade agreement. You know that you threatened Canada's sovereignty. You know that you demanded we surrender control of our natural resources and accept subordinate status. You know all of this because we discussed it directly. Then, the requirements. Restated. Calmly. Clearly. One final time. You have 8 days to do the right thing. Remove the tariffs. Completely. Sign the NORAD commitment. Retract your statements about Canadian provinces joining the United States. Compensate Canada for the economic damage your illegal tariffs caused. And recognize that Canadian resources belong to Canada. Those are the 5 requirements. They are not complicated. They are not unreasonable. They are the minimum basis for partnership between sovereign equals. Carney paused, and then he shifted, from diplomat to psychologist, from prime minister to counselor, speaking to Trump not as an adversary, but as someone who understands exactly what's happening inside his head. I know you don't like being challenged. I know you view compromise as weakness. But leadership sometimes requires admitting mistakes and changing course. The American people deserve a president who puts their interests ahead of his ego. And right now, your ego is driving America toward an economic crisis that will hurt millions of Americans. You can prevent that. All you have to do is meet Canada's 5 requirements. And then the trap. Mr. President, I invite you to join me on live television to debate this issue. You believe Canada should accept your terms. I believe Canada should defend its sovereignty. Let's debate it publicly. Let the American people hear both sides and decide who is right. I will appear on any network at any time with any moderator you choose. Any network, any time, any moderator you choose. Carney removed every possible excuse. You don't like CNN? Pick Fox. You don't like Cooper? Pick Hannity. You don't like primetime? Pick noon. There is no logistical objection. There is no procedural complaint. There is only one reason to refuse, and everyone watching knows what it is. All you have to do is agree to show up. Do you have the courage to defend your position in a fair debate? Or will you continue to hide behind press statements and social media posts? The CNN studio went silent. Not dramatic pause silent. Genuinely silent. Cooper, a man who has interviewed presidents, dictators, and war criminals, sat still, processing. Then he said, "You're challenging the President of the United States to a public debate." Carney said, "I'm offering him the opportunity to explain his position to his own citizens. If President Trump truly believes he's right, he should welcome that opportunity." And then, the finishing blow, if he refuses, the American people can draw their own conclusions about why he's afraid to defend his actions in public. The interview ended. Carney thanked Cooper, stood up, walked off set. 37 minutes. Documents. Audio. A public challenge. And the most devastating direct-to-public appeal by a foreign leader in the history of American television. Within seconds, social media exploded. Within minutes, every news network went wall-to-wall. Within an hour, the audio clip of Trump threatening to destroy Canada's economy had been played on every major network, shared millions of times, and embedded in the consciousness of the American electorate. And in Washington? Full crisis mode. 8:30 p.m., while the interview was still airing, White House staff began receiving frantic calls from congressional Republicans, not Democrats, Republicans, asking one question: is the audio real? The White House had no prepared response because they didn't know Carney had the recording. They didn't know he'd release it. And they certainly didn't expect him to play it on live American television during a primetime interview watched by nearly 19 million people. They were blindsided, again, by a man who has been 3 moves ahead of them since the first week of this crisis. 8:45 p.m., White House statement. The president's conversations with foreign leaders are protected by executive privilege. The selective release of partial recordings taken out of context is a violation of diplomatic norms. The president will not be responding to publicity stunts. Let's dissect this, because every word reveals a government that knows it's been caught. Protected by executive privilege. Executive privilege protects presidential communications from congressional subpoena. It does not retroactively make the content of those communications untrue. The audio is real. Privilege doesn't make it fake. Selective release, taken out of context. What context? What possible context makes "I will turn Canada into an economic wasteland" acceptable? What preceding sentence makes "I will destroy the Canadian economy" reasonable? The White House says out of context, but offers no context that would change the meaning, because there isn't any. Publicity stunts. A prime minister presenting documentary evidence on national television is not a stunt. It's an indictment. And the critical absence, no denial that the audio is authentic. Not one word claiming the recording is fabricated. Not one word saying that is not the president's voice. Because it is. And they know it. And they know that denying it would be a provable lie that would compound the damage exponentially. 9:15 p.m., Trump posts on Truth Social. Mark Carney is a liar and a coward. He knows what I said was taken out of context. He's desperate because Canada is losing and he knows it. I will never debate a foreign leader on American TV. That's beneath the dignity of the presidency. Beneath the dignity of the presidency. The man who appeared on WWE, who hosted a reality TV show, who held rallies in stadiums with walk-on music, says debating the Prime Minister of Canada on policy is beneath his dignity. He's not protecting dignity. He's protecting himself from a debate he would lose against an opponent who has facts, recordings, documents, allied support, market backing, and the moral high ground. Trump knows what would happen in that debate, and he is afraid of it. Canada will surrender or Canada will be destroyed. Their choice. And there it is. In trying to respond to Carney, Trump repeated the threat, the same language, the same choice, surrender or destruction. He didn't deny the audio. He confirmed it by saying the same thing again, on the record, in writing, for the world to see. Carney released 92 seconds of audio proving Trump threatens allies. Trump's response was to threaten the ally again, on social media, publicly, while 18.7 million Americans were still processing the original threat. You cannot make this up. 9:45 p.m. Congressional reaction. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer. I just listened to President Trump threaten to turn Canada into an economic wasteland unless they surrender. That is not how American presidents treat allies. That is how autocrats treat subordinates. The president owes the American people an explanation. If he won't debate Prime Minister Carney, he should at least address the nation and explain why he believes threatening our closest ally serves American interests. If you won't debate Carney, at least explain yourself. That's congressional leadership saying, you owe us answers. The President of the United States is now being told by his own Senate that he needs to explain himself. Not to Canada, to Americans. 10:30 p.m., the ratings. CNN reported that the Carney interview drew 18.7 million live viewers, the largest audience for a cable news interview in over 5 years. Millions more watched clips online. The audio clip alone has been viewed, shared, and reshared across every platform. By morning, the total audience will be measured in the hundreds of millions globally. Polling conducted immediately after the interview, 62% of Americans who watched believe Canada is justified in its position. 62% believe Trump should accept the 5 requirements. Carney's message reached a massive American audience, and that audience, by a nearly 2/3 margin, sided with him. Let me explain why Carney's decision to go on American television is so significant and so devastating to Trump, because it represents a fundamental break from how international disputes have been conducted for the entire modern era. Traditional diplomacy happens behind closed doors. Leaders communicate through official channels. Disputes are discussed privately before being addressed publicly. When disagreements become public, they're filtered through spokespersons, official statements, carefully worded communiques. Carney broke every one of those norms, deliberately, strategically, and with devastating effect. He went directly to the American public, on American television, during American prime time, and made his case without any filtering from the U.S. government. And this is effective for several reasons that go beyond just winning a news cycle. First, it allows Carney to control the narrative. Instead of the White House defining what this crisis is about, trade fairness, Canadian aggression, protecting American interests, Carney defines it. Sovereignty, respect, a bully threatening a neighbor. The White House's framing is now competing with Carney's framing, and Carney's framing is winning because it has evidence behind it.